The morning sun touched the cracked windows of a small apartment building where Sarah Miller, a single mother of 4, lived with her sons. The building was old, paint peeling off, but it was home, the only place she could afford after working double shifts at the local diner. Sarah had woken up early, brushed her hair, and put on her cleanest blouse. Today she had to visit the apartment office to renew her lease. Her heart was heavy because the manager had mentioned new fees on her bill. Things like cleaning charges, maintenance fees, and parking service, even though she didn't own a car. She didn't understand why the rent kept going up, but she wanted to stay calm. Her boys, Ethan, Liam, Noah, and Ben, were waiting by the door, their backpacks ready for school. "Mom, will everything be okay?" asked Ethan, the oldest. Sarah smiled softly. "Of course, sweetie. I'll take care of it. You just focus on school, okay?" Inside, she wasn't sure at all. At the leasing office, Mr. Collins, the building manager, sat behind a large desk. His voice was always loud and his smile fake. He looked up as Sarah entered and frowned slightly, as if her presence was already an inconvenience. "Oh, it's you again," he said. "Come about the rent, I suppose." Sarah nodded politely. "Yes, sir. I came to renew my lease, but I wanted to ask about the extra fees added this month." Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair. "Ah, yes, the standard service fees. Everyone pays those now." "But," Sarah said quietly, "I clean my apartment myself. I don't use the parking lot. And the building hasn't been repaired in months." He chuckled loud enough for the 2 other tenants in the office to hear. "Lady, that's not how business works. If you can't afford it, maybe you should move out. We can always find better-paying tenants." Sarah's cheeks turned red. The other people in the office looked at her, whispering softly. She wanted to disappear. She clutched her small purse. Inside, it was just enough money to pay the old rent, not the new inflated one. "Please, Mr. Collins," she said. "I've always paid on time. I just need a few days to adjust." "My kids," he interrupted with a smirk. "Kids? You mean the noisy boys always running in the hallway? Maybe you should spend less on feeding them and more on rent." A few people laughed under their breath. Sarah felt her heart sink. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. "I work hard," she whispered. "I clean houses and serve tables. I don't ask for help. I just want fairness." Mr. Collins sighed, pretending to look at the computer. "Well, rules are rules. Either pay the full amount or move out by next week." Sarah stood there frozen. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. She would not cry in front of him. She reached into her purse and pulled out what little she had, neatly folded bills and coins, and placed them on the desk. "This is all I can give for now," she said softly. "Please accept it until I get the rest." Mr. Collins looked at the money with clear disgust. "This isn't a charity, Miss Miller. You think pity pays the bills?" Her lip trembled, but she didn't reply. She took the receipt he handed her and turned away quietly. The other tenants looked at her, some with sympathy, others with coldness. As she stepped outside, her 4 boys were waiting near the stairs holding their school bags. "Mom?" little Ben asked. "Why are you crying?" Sarah quickly wiped her face and smiled. "I'm not crying, honey. The wind just got in my eyes." Ethan looked at her, worried but silent. He could tell his mother was hiding something. They walked home slowly, the boys holding her hands. Sarah forced a smile every time one of them looked up at her. She didn't want them to see her pain. Inside her heart, though, she felt small, humiliated and powerless. That night, after the boys were asleep, she sat by the window, staring at the city lights. The rent money was almost gone, and she didn't know how she would pay the new amount next month. She whispered to herself, "Why is life always this hard?" The phone beside her buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A deep voice came through the line. "Sarah, it's been a long time." Her breath caught. The voice was calm but familiar, one she hadn't heard in years. "Who is this?" she asked softly. "It's Michael," the voice said. "I'm in town. I heard about the building. We need to talk." Sarah froze. Her heart raced. The name hit her like a storm. Michael, the man she once loved. The man who had disappeared years ago. The father of her children. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. She didn't know if this was hope returning, or a new wave of pain. But one thing was clear. Something was about to change. Because sometimes when the world humiliates the kind-hearted, destiny watches quietly, waiting for the right moment to turn everything around. The evening sun faded behind the old buildings as Sarah and her 4 boys walked back home. The streets were noisy, but in her heart, all she could hear was Mr. Collins's cruel voice. Maybe you should move out. Those words kept echoing in her mind. She tried to stay calm for the boys. As soon as they reached home, she went straight to the small kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty. A half loaf of bread, 2 eggs, and a jar of peanut butter. She looked at it quietly, then smiled to herself. "We'll make something good," she whispered. Her sons helped set the table. Ethan, the oldest at 12, tried to cheer her up. "Mom, we can make French toast again. Remember last time? Ben said it was the best dinner ever." Sarah laughed softly. "Yes, Chef Ethan, you're right." She cracked the eggs and mixed them with milk, pretending everything was normal. The smell of toast soon filled the air, making the boys smile. They sat together, laughing and eating as if nothing in the world was wrong. But deep down, Sarah's heart ached. She knew that after tonight she would have to make hard choices. Rent, food, school, everything was becoming too much. After dinner, she tucked little Ben into bed. He was only 6 and still believed his mom could fix anything. "Mom," he said sleepily, "when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house. It'll have a garden and a swing." Sarah smiled and brushed his hair. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart. I'll hold you to that." In the next room, Ethan and Liam were whispering. She overheard them through the thin walls. "Do you think Mom is okay?" Liam asked. "She's trying to be," Ethan replied quietly. "But I heard that man at the office. He was mean. I wish Dad was here," Liam sighed. "He'd protect her." Sarah stopped in the hallway, her heart breaking. She leaned against the wall, tears running down her cheeks. They never knew much about their father, only that he had left before Ben was born. She never told them the full story because she didn't want them to hate him. That night she couldn't sleep. The phone call from earlier kept replaying in her head. "It's Michael. I'm in town. We need to talk." She stared at the old phone on the table, her fingers hovering over it. Should she call back? Could she trust him again after so many years? Her thoughts drifted back to the past, the small town where they met. Michael was kind, ambitious, and full of dreams. He wanted to start his own business, but when life got hard, he left suddenly, promising to return. He never did. Or at least not until now. She sighed deeply. "Why now?" she whispered. Why after all these years? Morning came too soon. Sarah woke up early, got dressed, and started her day at the diner. The boys left for school, waving goodbye from the street. At work, Sarah moved quickly between tables, refilling coffee cups, smiling at customers. But inside, she was miles away, thinking about that mysterious call. Her friend Linda, who worked at the counter, noticed something was off. "Hey, Sarah," Linda said softly, "you look pale. Everything all right?" Sarah forced a smile. "Just tired, that's all." Linda leaned closer. "Is it that manager again? If he's still giving you trouble, you should report him." Sarah shook her head. "It's not that. Something else. Someone called me last night. Someone from my past." Linda raised an eyebrow. "Oh, good or bad news?" "I don't know yet," Sarah said quietly. "He said his name is Michael." Linda's eyes widened. "The Michael? The one you told me about?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, he said he's in town." Linda smiled gently. "Well, maybe he's finally ready to make things right." Sarah looked down at her hands, holding a coffee pot. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. After work, Sarah picked up her boys from school. On the way home, Ethan noticed something. A shiny black car was parked across the street from their building. The engine was off, but the man inside seemed to be watching them. "Mom, look," Ethan said, pointing. "That car's been there since morning." Sarah froze. The same kind of car she remembered Michael driving years ago. Her heart started to race. She hurried the boys inside and locked the door. Inside, the phone buzzed again. One new message. "Sarah, please don't be afraid. I just want to see you. I'll wait until you're ready." She sat down on the couch, the boys watching cartoons nearby. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time not from sadness, but from confusion. Could Michael really be back? Could he help her out of this mess? Ethan noticed her staring at the phone. "Mom, who's texting you?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Just an old friend." Late that night, after the boys had gone to bed, she finally gathered the courage to reply. "I don't know why you're back, but if this is real, meet me tomorrow at the diner, noon. She sent the message and placed the phone face down. Her hands shook. She didn't know what to expect. Anger, regret, or maybe a chance to start over. As she turned off the light, she whispered a small prayer. Please let tomorrow be better. Outside, the black car was still parked under the streetlight. The man inside looked at the apartment window, his eyes soft but determined. He whispered to himself, Tomorrow, Sarah. Tomorrow. I make things right. And somewhere in the quiet city night, fate began to move again, slowly, silently, but with purpose. The next morning was calm, but Sarah's heart was anything but. She had barely slept. The message she sent last night to Michael replayed in her head over and over. Meet me tomorrow at the diner. Noon. She tried to focus on the morning routine. The boys rushed around, packing lunches and searching for missing shoes. Sarah helped them as usual, forcing a gentle smile, though her mind was far away. Ethan noticed her quietness. Mom, are you okay? He asked softly. Sarah nodded. Yes, sweetheart. Just thinking about some work stuff. When they left for school, she stood by the window staring at the empty street. The black car was gone. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined everything. The message, the voice, the promise. But deep inside, something told her today would be different. At exactly noon, the bell above the diner door rang. The sound made Sarah's heart jump. She turned, holding a coffee pot, and froze. It was him, Michael. He looked different. Older, sharper, but his eyes were the same. Calm, deep, and filled with emotions she couldn't read. He wore a gray suit, and when he saw her, he smiled softly. Hello, Sarah, he said gently. Her hands trembled slightly. Michael, she whispered. You actually came? The other waitresses glanced curiously. Sarah quickly led him to a quiet corner booth. Her voice was soft but serious. Why are you here after all these years? Michael took a deep breath. Because I finally can be. I made mistakes, Sarah. I left when I shouldn't have. But I promised myself that when I came back, it would be to fix everything, not break it again. Sarah didn't reply. She just listened, unsure whether to believe him. He continued, his tone honest and calm. When I left, I had nothing. I tried to build a business from nothing. Failed many times. But I never stopped thinking about you and our sons. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You knew I had boys? Michael nodded. I did. I heard stories from people back home. I wanted to come sooner, but I wanted to have something to offer first. I didn't want to return empty-handed. She looked down. We didn't need money, Michael. We just needed you. The words hit him hard. He reached out slowly, but she pulled her hand back. You don't get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened, she said quietly. I know, he replied. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do want a chance to help you now. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of coffee cups, the chatter of customers, and the hum of the diner filled the silence. Finally, Sarah sighed. Help me. How could you possibly help me now? Michael leaned forward. Tell me what's going on. You sounded upset on the phone. Sarah hesitated, but then told him everything. About the building, about Mr. Collins, about the fake junk fees, and how he had humiliated her in front of others. Her voice broke once or twice, but she kept going. Michael listened carefully, his jaw tightening as she spoke. When she finished, he said calmly, So that man has been taking advantage of you and others? Sarah nodded. Yes, and I can't move out. The boys love their school, I just can't start over again. Michael's expression changed. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with determination. Don't worry about the rent anymore. I'll handle it. Sarah frowned. Michael, please, I don't want charity. He smiled faintly. It's not charity, Sarah, it's justice. And trust me, I have ways of making sure that manager never hurts anyone again. After his meal, Michael left his business card on the table, sleek, silver, and simple. It read, Michael Reynolds, founder and CEO, Reynolds Property Group. Sarah stared at the card in shock. Property Group? She whispered. You own real estate? Michael smiled softly. Let's just say I know a few people in that world now. She blinked, speechless. He gently said, Let me take care of it, Sarah. You focus on the boys. Before she could reply, a voice called from the door. Ethan's voice. Mom. Sarah turned. Her 4 boys stood there, surprised to see her talking to a stranger. Michael's eyes softened immediately as he saw them. His sons. They looked back at him, confused but curious. "Who's that man, Mom?" asked Liam. Sarah hesitated. The moment she had feared for years had finally come. "This is someone I used to know. A friend," she said quietly. Michael smiled gently and crouched down to their level. "You must be Ethan, right? You look just like I did when I was your age." Ethan blinked. "How do you know my name?" Sarah's heart raced. She hadn't told him their names. Michael looked up at her with quiet emotion. "Because I'm your dad." The boys froze. The diner fell silent. Even Sarah forgot to breathe. For a few seconds no one spoke. Then little Ben, shy and wide-eyed, whispered, "Dad?" Michael nodded, his eyes glistening. "Yes, buddy. I'm sorry I wasn't here, but I promise I'm not leaving again." Sarah looked away, her emotions mixed. Anger, relief, fear, and something like hope. Michael stood, not wanting to pressure her. "I'll give you space," he said softly. "But I'll fix everything, Sarah, you have my word." He turned and left the diner quietly, the doorbell chiming behind him. Sarah stood frozen, staring after him. Ethan stepped closer. "Mom, was he really telling the truth?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she touched the silver business card in her hand and whispered, "We'll find out soon enough." Outside, Michael got into his car, his jaw set. He looked up at the building across the street, the same one where Sarah lived. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yes, it's me. I want to buy that entire building, today." And just like that, the real story was about to begin. For the next few days, life went on as usual, at least on the surface. Sarah woke up early, packed lunches, and sent her boys to school. She went to work, smiled at customers, and tried to keep her mind off that one moment at the diner. The moment when Michael said, "Because I'm your dad." His words echoed in her heart again and again. She didn't know what to believe. Could a man really change so much after being gone for years? Or was it just another promise that would fade away? Still, something deep inside her told her this time was different. That same morning, in a tall glass building downtown, Michael sat in his modern office, staring out at the city skyline. His assistant entered with a folder. "Sir," she said softly, "the purchase papers are ready. You now officially own the Maplewood apartment complex." Michael smiled faintly. "Good. Make sure all tenants are treated with respect from now on. No fake fees. And send an inspection team today." The assistant nodded. "Should we inform the current manager, Mr. Collins?" Michael's eyes turned cold. "Not yet," he said calmly. "I want to see how he behaves before we reveal anything." He leaned back in his chair, thinking of Sarah. The image of her tired eyes at the diner still haunted him. He had walked away from her once, but not again. This time he would protect her, even if she never forgave him. Back at the apartment, Sarah sat by the window after work, lost in thought. The boys were doing homework, their laughter filling the small room. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then Ethan looked up. "Mom, that man who came to the diner." "He said he's our dad." "Is that true?" Sarah sighed softly. She had been expecting this question. "Yes, Ethan," she said gently. "He is your father." Liam frowned. "Why did he leave us?" Sarah looked at the floor. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," she said quietly. He thought he was doing what was best, but he was wrong. Ben, the youngest, hugged her arm. "Is he bad?" She shook her head. "No, honey, just lost. Maybe he's trying to find his way back now." The boys nodded, their faces thoughtful. Then Noah smiled a little. "If he comes back, can he have dinner with us?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Maybe. We'll see." The next day, strange things began to happen around the building. Workers arrived in trucks unloading new materials. They started fixing the old pipes, repainting walls, and repairing the broken playground equipment that had been useless for years. Tenants whispered in the hallways. "Did you hear? The new owner took over the place." "Who is he?" another asked. "No one knows, but they say he's rich and kind." Sarah listened quietly as she passed, her curiosity growing. Mr. Collins, however, looked more nervous than ever. He barked orders at the workers, pretending to be in charge. But they didn't listen to him anymore. That evening, when Sarah went to pay her remaining rent, she noticed something odd. Her account showed a credit balance. "Wait," she said, confused. "I didn't pay this much." There must be a mistake. The woman at the counter smiled. It's not a mistake, ma'am. Your new landlord covered your dues. Sarah froze. My landlord? Yes, the new building owner. He said your account should always stay clear. Sarah felt her heart pound. Could it be him? Later that night, as she tucked the boys into bed, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find a delivery man holding a box. For Miss Sarah Miller, he said. Inside the box was a beautiful new coffee machine, a letter, and a small card. She opened the letter slowly. Sarah, I know you don't want help, but this isn't charity. It's something you deserve. Comfort, peace, and respect. Let me fix what I once broke. Michael. Her hands trembled as she read it. She looked over at the boys who were giggling on the couch. A single tear rolled down her cheek, not from sadness, but from relief. Maybe, just maybe, people could change. Meanwhile, across town, Michael stood in the new office of the building speaking with a few tenants. From now on, he told them, there will be no hidden charges, no unfair treatment. If anyone has problems, they come directly to me. The tenants smiled and thanked him, but when Mr. Collins entered, his fake grin in place, Michael turned to him calmly. Mr. Collins, he said. How are things running? Everything's perfect, sir, Collins replied nervously. I've been managing this place for years. Tenants love me. Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes. Do they? He asked softly. Because I've heard quite the opposite. Collins's face turned pale. What do you mean? Michael simply handed him a sealed letter. You'll find out soon enough. I'll be visiting this place personally tomorrow. Make sure everything's in order. Collins nodded shakily and left the office. The door closed behind him and Michael exhaled slowly. Tomorrow would be the day of truth. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep again. She sat by the window holding the letter in her hands. She whispered softly, What are you planning, Michael? The moonlight touched her face gently as she looked out toward the street, where a familiar black car sat once again, waiting quietly. Inside, Michael sat in the driver's seat, watching the lights of the building. His eyes were tired but peaceful. He whispered to himself, Tomorrow, she'll finally know. And as the clock ticked past midnight, fate began preparing for the moment when truth and justice would finally meet. Morning sunlight touched the Maplewood apartment building like a quiet promise. Tenants were standing outside, talking about the sudden changes, the repairs, the new paint, and the workers who smiled politely but refused to say who had sent them. But one person wasn't smiling. Mr. Collins, the manager. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled, and his temper short. He had noticed that the repair team didn't take his orders anymore. Even the rent office had started getting calls from head management, asking for reports. Something was changing and it made him uneasy. He tried to call the old owner's number, but it didn't exist anymore. What's going on? He muttered under his breath. Just then, an email popped up on his screen. To Building Manager, Maplewood Apartments, from Reynolds Property Group. Subject, urgent tenant meeting at 5 p.m. All tenants are to gather in the main lobby. The new owner will be visiting in person. Collins stared at the message. New owner? He said aloud. Why didn't anyone tell me? He grabbed his tie, combed his hair, and straightened his jacket. Fine, he said. Whoever it is, they'll see I'm the best manager they've ever had. By evening, the lobby was full. Families stood together, whispering excitedly. Sarah came with her 4 boys, each of them curious. She held Ben's hand tightly, still unsure why she was even there. Mr. Collins walked around with his fake smile, pretending to be in control. All right, everyone, calm down, he said loudly. The new owner will arrive soon. And remember, any complaints can be discussed through me. Sarah frowned. Something about his nervous energy didn't feel right. Just then, the elevator dinged. Everyone turned. Out stepped a man in a dark gray suit, confident, calm, and familiar. It was Michael. Gasps filled the room. Sarah's eyes widened. The boys froze beside her. Collins blinked in confusion. Sir, he said, forcing a laugh. There must be some mistake. This is a tenant meeting, not... Michael raised a hand politely. I know exactly where I am, Mr. Collins, he said firmly. Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Reynolds, the new owner of Maplewood Apartments. The room fell silent. You could hear a pin drop. Collins's fake smile disappeared. Michael looked around the lobby, his voice calm but steady. First, I want to thank everyone for coming. I know this building has seen hard times. Leaks, poor service, unfair charges. That ends today. The crowd murmured in surprise and relief. He continued, My company bought this property last week. From now on, every tenant will be treated with respect. No more hidden junk fees. No more rude behavior. Everyone here deserves honesty and fairness. People clapped softly, smiling. But Collins's face turned pale. Sweat gathered on his forehead. Michael turned his eyes to him. Mr. Collins, he said slowly, you've managed this building for years, correct? Collins stammered, Yes, sir. I've always done my best. You can ask anyone, Michael interrupted calmly. Actually, I already did. I've spoken to the tenants, and I've read the records. You charged cleaning fees to apartments that never received cleaning. You added parking charges to people without cars. You mocked a single mother who asked for fairness. Does that sound like doing your best? The color drained from Collins's face. The crowd started whispering. Some even nodded, and they had seen it all. Michael looked toward Sarah, who stood frozen in disbelief. Miss Miller, he said gently, would you please come forward? Sarah blinked. Me? Yes, Michael said. Please. She stepped forward slowly, her boys watching closely. This woman, Michael said to everyone, was humiliated right here in this building. She worked hard, paid on time, and was still shamed for being a mother of 4. That's not management, that's cruelty. The crowd went silent. Collins looked around desperately. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just business. Michael's tone grew cold. Business doesn't excuse disrespect. From this moment, you're dismissed. Gasps filled the air. Collins's mouth dropped open. You can't do this to me. Michael's eyes didn't waver. I just did. Security stepped forward. The same men who had been quietly standing by the door. Collins backed away, realizing it was over. After he left, the lobby filled with clapping and cheers. Tenants thanked Michael, some even wiping tears. Sarah stood still, overwhelmed. Michael turned to her softly. You don't have to worry about rent anymore. Consider it covered for as long as you need. You and your boys deserve peace. Sarah's voice shook. Michael, you didn't have to. He smiled gently. Yes, I did. It's my way of saying sorry, and starting again. Ethan stepped forward, his young voice breaking the silence. Are you really our dad? Michael knelt down, his eyes kind. Yes, son. And I promise this time I'm staying. Ethan's face softened. Slowly he hugged him. One by one, the other boys joined. Sarah stood watching, her heart finally finding calm after years of struggle. That night, the building felt different. Lights glowed warmer. Neighbors greeted each other with smiles, and laughter filled the hallways again. Sarah stood by her window, looking out at the city. Michael walked out of the lobby, glancing up at her window. For a moment, their eyes met. He smiled. She smiled back. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, family, and redemption. The man who once left was now the man who changed everything. Quietly, humbly, and with love. And for the first time in years, Sarah whispered to herself, maybe, we're finally home. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows of Sarah's apartment. It felt different, warmer, softer, like life itself had changed overnight. For the first time in years, Sarah woke up without worry pressing down on her chest. The boys were already awake, laughing and eating cereal around the small table. Ethan looked up with a grin. Mom, did you see the playground? They fixed the swings, Liam added excitedly. And there's fresh paint on the hallway. It doesn't smell bad anymore. Sarah smiled, feeling a lump in her throat. The world around them, their world, was finally getting better. She glanced out the window and saw workers finishing repairs. The building looked almost new again, but what caught her eye wasn't the workers. It was Michael standing near his car, talking with a group of tenants. He looked relaxed, confident, and kind. For a moment, she just watched him, remembering the man he used to be, and realizing how much he had changed. Later that morning, Michael knocked on her door. Good morning, he said softly. May I come in? Sarah hesitated for a second, then nodded. Sure, the boys jumped up from the couch, excited. Hi, Dad, Ben said shyly. Michael smiled, kneeling down to their level. Hey, champ, he said, ruffling Ben's hair. Did you all sleep well? Yes, Liam answered proudly. And guess what? Mom made pancakes, Michael chuckled. Now that's something I missed. Sarah blushed slightly. It's just breakfast, she said quietly, handing him a cup of coffee. He accepted it gratefully and took a seat. The air was filled with soft laughter and the smell of warm food. It felt like a family again, something Sarah hadn't felt in years. After breakfast, Michael turned serious. "Sarah," he said gently, "I wanted to tell you something. About yesterday." She looked at him carefully. "You mean about firing Mr. Collins?" He nodded. "Yes, I didn't do it to show off. I did it because people like him ruin lives. Not just yours, but everyone's here. They think power gives them the right to shame others. I couldn't stand watching that." Sarah sighed, her voice soft. "I never asked you to fix things for me." Michael smiled sadly. "I know, but maybe I needed to fix them for myself." She didn't respond right away. She looked at the boys playing in the corner, happy, peaceful, safe. "You really bought this whole building?" He nodded. "And a few others in the city. But this one," he paused, smiling gently. "This one is special. It's where you live. It's where my sons live." Her eyes softened, but she stayed quiet. The walls that had taken years to build around her heart were beginning to crack. Just a little. Outside, the tenants gathered again. They wanted to thank Michael personally. Families came with flowers, kids waved, and old tenants smiled with tears in their eyes. One older woman, Mrs. Jenkins, took Sarah's hand. "Honey, that man of yours? He's an angel in a suit. The way he spoke for you yesterday, and I've never seen anything like it." Sarah smiled, still shy about the attention. "He's trying to make things right," Mrs. Jenkins chuckled. "Well, he's doing a fine job of it." Meanwhile, Mr. Collins stood outside the gate, watching everything from a distance. He looked smaller now, not just because he had lost his job, but because he realized how wrong he had been. He wanted to say something, maybe apologize, but he couldn't. He simply turned and walked away, disappearing down the street. Justice didn't always need shouting or revenge. Sometimes it just needed truth and decency, and that was enough. That evening, Michael invited all the tenants to a small gathering in the courtyard. Fairy lights hung across the trees and tables were set up with snacks and drinks. Children played on the new swings while adults chatted and laughed. It was a celebration, not of money but of peace. Michael stood at the front holding a microphone. "Thank you all for being here," he said warmly. "This building doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of us. A community only works when people care about each other, so from now on, Maplewood Apartments will have a tenant council. You'll decide what needs to be done, and my company will support it." Applause filled the courtyard. Then with a smile, he looked towards Sarah and her boys. "And to the Miller family," he said softly. "Thank you for reminding me what really matters." Sarah's heart swelled. She hadn't expected him to say that in front of everyone. The crowd clapped louder and the boys grinned proudly. When the lights dimmed and people began leaving, Sarah stayed behind with Michael. The night air was cool, the city quiet around them. She turned to him, her voice gentle. "You didn't have to do all this, you know." Michael looked at her with a soft smile. "I didn't have to," he said, "but I wanted to. You gave me something years ago that I didn't understand. Real love, real family. I'm just trying to give it back." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Maybe. We both needed to heal." He nodded. "Maybe we did." As the boys ran up to them, laughing and chasing fireflies, Michael reached out and took Sarah's hand. Not demanding, not forcing, just gently. This time she didn't pull away. The moonlight reflected in her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you, Michael." "For what?" he asked softly. "For keeping your promise?" He smiled. "I'm not done yet." And as laughter filled the courtyard once more, Sarah realized something beautiful. That justice wasn't about revenge. It was about kindness winning in the end. The next morning came with soft golden light spilling across the apartment walls. Birds chirped outside the window and the smell of pancakes filled the air. Sarah stood in the kitchen, flipping them one by one, humming quietly. For the first time in years, she felt light, truly light. No worry about rent. No fear of losing her home. Just peace. Ethan peeked in, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, you're up early," he said, yawning. Sarah smiled. "I couldn't sleep. My heart feels full today." Liam grinned from the table. "Is it because of Dad?" She froze for a moment, then turned with a gentle smile. "Maybe," she said softly. "Maybe because everything feels right again." The boys exchanged happy looks. For them, the word Dad had always felt like a dream, something far away. But now it was real. Around 10 in the morning, there was a knock at the door. Sarah opened it, and there stood Michael, holding a bouquet of fresh flowers and a small box. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I come bearing peace offerings." Sarah smiled shyly. "You already brought peace to this whole building." "What's this now?" He handed her the flowers. "These are for you. And this." He opened the box, revealing 5 small keys, each labeled with their names. "Is for your family." Sarah frowned softly. "Keys?" Michael nodded. "To your new apartment upstairs, 3 bedrooms, balcony, and a real kitchen. No more leaking ceilings. It's yours permanently. No rent, no fees." Sarah's eyes widened. "Michael, that's too much." He shook his head gently. "No, it's not. It's just what you should have always had." Tears filled her eyes. "You've done enough already." He smiled softly. "Not enough to make up for the years I missed." The boys ran forward, excited. "We get our own room?" Noah shouted. Michael laughed. "Yes, and Ben gets the one with the window seat." Ben gasped. "Really? The one with the big light?" Michael nodded. "That's the one." The boys hugged him tightly. Ethan looked up at him seriously. "Dad, are you going away again?" Michael knelt down, looking him straight in the eyes. "Never again," he said firmly. "I left once, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. From now on, I'm here, every day, every morning." Ethan smiled and hugged him again. "Okay, then I forgive you." Sarah stood near the doorway, tears rolling silently down her cheeks as she watched her children finally find the father they had dreamed about. Later that day, the whole building came alive again. Families gathered in the courtyard, laughing and celebrating the new changes. Kids played on the fixed swings, and music played from a small speaker someone had brought out. The air was full of joy. Mrs. Jenkins, the kind old lady from next door, brought cookies. "Well, if this isn't the happiest day I've seen here," she said, smiling at Sarah. "You must be proud, dear." Sarah nodded, her eyes warm. "More than proud. I'm grateful." As evening came, Michael invited Sarah and the boys to the rooftop. He had set up something special, a small dinner table under the stars with fairy lights glowing all around. When they reached the roof, Sarah gasped. The city lights sparkled below, and the air felt cool and peaceful. "Michael, this is beautiful," he smiled. "You deserve beautiful." They sat together, eating and talking about everything they had missed. Birthdays, school moments, small stories from the past. Michael listened carefully to every word, laughing, sometimes getting quiet, sometimes emotional. At one point, Sarah looked at him and said softly, "You know, I never thought I'd see this day." Michael's voice was low. "Neither did I, but I think life gives us second chances when we learn to be better." She nodded. "And you really did?" He smiled gently. "Not just me. You did too. You never gave up. Not on life, not on the boys, not on kindness." Sarah looked down, her heart full. "Kindness is all I had left. And it's what saved everything," he replied softly. When dinner ended, the boys were sleepy, leaning against each other. Sarah stood beside Michael, looking at the stars. "You know," she said, "when I was at my lowest, I used to pray for just one miracle. I didn't know it would come back wearing a gray suit and a smile." Michael laughed quietly. "Maybe the universe has a sense of humor." She smiled. "Maybe it does." He turned to her. "Sarah," he said gently, "I can't change the past, but I want to build the future with you. No promises I can't keep this time. Just one truth, I'll be here." Sarah met his eyes, and for the first time she didn't see the man who left. She saw the man who came back. She nodded slowly. "Then let's start again." Michael took her hand, holding it gently as the city lights shimmered below them. The next morning, neighbors waved as the family moved into their new apartment. Laughter echoed through the halls again. The junk fees were gone forever. A community that had once felt hopeless now thrived with unity and respect. Sarah stood on her new balcony, watching her boys play below, Michael helping them build a small garden near the playground. For the first time, she whispered with a smile, This is home." The camera of life slowly zoomed out, a family reunited. A building reborn, and a woman once humiliated now standing tall, surrounded by love and peace. Because sometimes true justice isn't about revenge. It's about healing, forgiveness, and finding your way back home.